She's staying at her cousin's house because her home got destroyed. Her cousin was Noah, and he was the rich, spoiled man on the wealthy family. He loves her so much and cares for her. It was late at night, and she was thirsty, so she went to the kitchen. She got a cup of water. She felt a hand. Her cousin behind her smiled with care and love. "Thirsty, cutie?" he teased. "Noah," she said, looking at him happily. "Later, princess," he chuckled, taking some fruit eating while watching her smiling to her. He went closer to her. He held her waist and lifted her on the counter. He kissed her forehead softly. "I love you so much," he said gently while tracing her cheek. Carolina wrapped her legs around his waist and hugged him, feeling safe and loved in his embrace. "I love you more," she replied, pressing her body closer to his. Noah was driving and she sat on the passenger's seat, still tired and sleepy. She leaned against the window, watching the world move by. Noah glanced over at her, noticing her yawn. "Not a morning person, huh, princess?" he said with. She shot him a drowsy glare and playfully hit his arm. "Shut up. Not everyone can be a morning person like you, you jerk," she teased, a small smile forming on her lips. Noah chuckled, finding her grumpy morning antics adorable. "You know you love me, even when I'm annoyingly cheerful in the mornings," he replied, reaching over to playfully ruffle her hair. She batted his hand away, feigning annoyance, but secretly loving the little gestures. "You're insufferable, you know that," she said, suppressing a smile. Noah nodded, grinning widely. "I get that a lot, but I know you secretly like it." He winked, turning his attention back to the road as he pulled into the university parking lot. Carolina rolled her eyes, a hint of a smile still on her face. Yeah, whatever. Just don't let it go to your head, Mr. Cocky," she teased, unbuckling her seatbelt and grabbing her backpack from the back seat. Noah followed suit, getting out of the car and waiting for her. "Oh, princess, my ego is already pretty inflated, but I'll try not to let it explode anytime soon," he joked, slinging his arm around her shoulders as they walked towards the campus. Carolina leaned into him, enjoying the warmth of his touch. "You're lucky. I find your arrogance endearing. Otherwise, I'd have kicked your ass by now." She playfully elbowed him in the side, grinning. Noah winced slightly, feigning pain. "Ah, princess, your love is so painful," he joked, pulling her closer and planting a kiss on her forehead. "But seriously, I wouldn't have it any other way." He smiled. She couldn't help but laugh at his dramatic reaction. She rolled her eyes, mock annoyed. "You're the worst, you know that. But I wouldn't have it any other way either." She reached up and ruffled his hair affectionately. Noah's heart fluttered at her touch. Despite his cocky exterior, he secretly craved her attention and affection. I know. I'm just too charming for my own good," he joked, but there was a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. Carolina noticed the vulnerability in his gaze, and her expression softened. She knew him better than anyone else, and she knew that beneath the arrogant facade there was a kind and sensitive heart. "You're more than that, Noah. You're a sweet idiot," she teased, poking his nose affectionately. Noah pretended to be offended, letting out an exaggerated gasp. "Sweet? Me? You wound me, princess." He feigned a heartbroken expression before breaking into a wide grin. He knew she could see straight through his act. Carolina smirked, raising an eyebrow. Oh, please. You love being called sweet. We both know you're a big softy beneath all that ego. She poked his chest playfully. Noah playfully grabbed her poking hand, holding it against his chest. Yeah, you caught me. I'm a total marshmallow inside, but don't tell anyone, all right? Gotta keep up my bad boy image. He winked, his grip on her hand gentle yet possessive. She laughed, not pulling her hand away from his grip. Your secret's safe with me, bad boy. I wouldn't want you to lose your street cred. She rolled her eyes jokingly, but secretly loved the possessive gesture. Noah pulled her closer, their bodies now pressed against each other. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. You know you're the only one who gets to see my soft side, princess. The rest of the world can keep believing I... He whispered, his voice low and filled with affection. Carolina's heart skipped a beat at his words. She melted into his touch, her knees going weak as he held her close. Well, I guess I should feel special, huh? Having the world's eye wrapped around my finger, she teased, her voice trembling slightly. As they walked into the class, Carolina's eyes flicked over to Noah's two friends, Carlos and Mark. They were both popular and known for their troublemaker behavior. She felt their gazes linger on her and Noah, and a hint of jealousy flickered in their eyes. She nudged Noah, whispering, Your friends are staring. Noah followed her gaze, nodding nonchalantly. Yeah, they're probably just trying to figure out how I got the hottest girl in school. He smirked, playfully tightening his grip on her waist. She rolled her eyes, playfully swatting his arm. Or they're just wondering how you convinced me to put up with you, she teased, unable to suppress a smile at his cocky reply. He chuckled, pulling her closer and... Oh, princess, you know you love me and my cocky attitude. You wouldn't have it any other way. He teased back, his voice dripping with arrogance. She tried to suppress it, feeling a mix of annoyance and desire. Yeah, keep telling yourself that, smart guy. She managed to reply, her voice betraying a hint of breathlessness. As soon as they were interrupted, Carolina's expression shifted from playful banter to a guarded one. She straightened up, putting some distance between herself and Noah, while casting a weary glance at his two friends. Carlos smirked, eyeing Carolina up and down. Hey, Noah, didn't realize you had a girl. She's a cutie, he said, his gaze lingering on her a bit too long for comfort. Mark chimed in, eyeing her with interest. Yeah, she's smoking hot. You're a lucky guy, Noah, he said, his tone slightly suggestive. Carolina felt her skin crawl at their words. Noah's grip on her waist tightened, his expression hardening as he noticed their eyes roving over her. He stepped in front of her protectively. Back off, guys. She's mine, he warned, his voice a low growl. Carlos raised his hands in mock surrender. Whoa, relax, buddy. Just admiring the view. No need to get territorial, he said with a sly smirk. Mark chuckled, still eyeing her with appreciation. Yeah, can you blame us? You're a lucky man, Noah, he repeated, his gaze flickering between her and Noah. Noah clenched his jaw, his protective instincts flaring up. I said, back off. She's not some piece of meat for you two to drool over. She's mine, he growled, his eyes narrowing at them. Carlos raised an eyebrow, amused by Noah's possessive display. Calm down, tough guy. No need to get your panties in a twist. We're just admiring the goods, that's all, he said, taking a step closer to Carolina. Noah's grip on her tightened almost painfully. "I'm warning you, stop eyeing her like that. She's not an item for you to look at," he hissed, his voice filled with barely contained anger. As they walked away, she could still feel the tension radiating off of Noah. His grip on her hand was tight, as if he was trying to hold on to her as tightly as possible. She looked up at him, seeing the possessive gleam in his eye. She squeezed his hand gently, trying to soothe him. "Noah, chill. They're just being their usual jerk selves. I can handle a few guys looking at me," she said softly, trying to lighten the mood. He scoffed, not looking at her. "I know you can handle yourself, princess, but they have no right to talk about you like that," he said with a fierce determination in his voice. He pulled her closer. As they entered the class, Carolina could still feel the tension emanating from Noah. He sat down, his body rigid, and his jaw clenched. She took a seat next to him, trying to act calm but feeling the weight of his possessive gaze on her. The professor began the lecture, but Carolina found it hard to focus. She could feel Noah's eyes boring into her, his possessive energy making her uncomfortable. She shuffled in her seat, trying to create some distance between them, but he reached out and placed. As the week passed, Carolina noticed that Noah's friends, Mark and Carlos, seemed to be trying to get back into his good graces. They were always around him, offering him food or trying to engage him in conversation. Despite their efforts, Noah remained distant and brooding, his thoughts consumed by his possessiveness over Carolina. Eventually, Mark approached him during lunch break. "Hey man, I know you're still mad at us for last week. We're sorry, okay? We were just messing around," he attempted to explain. Carlos joined in, trying to smooth things over. "Yeah, we didn't mean anything by it. We're just used to making those kinds of comments, you know? It's just our way of joking around," he chimed in, trying to downplay their previous behavior. Noah, visibly annoyed, glared at them. "I don't care if it was just a joke. You were both eyeing her like she was a piece of meat, and I won't tolerate that," he replied with a clenched jaw. Mark rolled his eyes. "Come on, man, she's hot. What do you expect us to do? We're just appreciating the view," he said casually, clearly not getting the seriousness of the situation. Carlos snickered in agreement. "Yeah, can't blame us for having eyes. She's walking around in those tight skirts and low-cut tops. She's basically asking for it, don't you think?" he said, a cocky smirk on his face. As they both talked about her like she was a piece of meat, Carolina felt a wave of anger and indignation wash over her. She couldn't believe the audacity and disrespect in their words. And when she heard Carlos's casual dismissal of their behavior, implying it was her fault for what she wore, she snapped. She marched up to them, her eyes narrowed in fury, and slapped Carlos across the face with a resounding smack. The impact of her slap echoed through the room, and Carlos's face turned red with a handprint. He looked stunned, his cocky demeanor shattered by her bold move. Mark's eyes widened in shock, and he froze in place, his mouth agape. Noah was taken aback by her actions. He had never seen her lose her composure like that before. He stood there in stunned silence, his expression a mix of surprise and admiration. Carlos clutched his cheek, a mixture of anger and disbelief in his eyes. He looked at her with a stunned expression, clearly not expecting such a reaction from her. The room fell into an awkward silence as everyone stared at them, unsure of how to react. Mark cleared his throat, trying to diffuse the tension. Maybe we went too far, man. Carolina's voice rang out, clear and powerful, silencing everyone in the vicinity. What gives you the right to talk about me like I'm an object? I'm a human being, not some piece of meat for you to gawk at, she yelled, her anger barely contained. Carlos, still reeling from the slap, rubbed his cheek defiantly. It's not that big of a deal, princess. We were just admiring your assets. He tried to defend himself weakly. Another sharp slap landed on his cheek, harder this time. Don't you dare call me princess! And don't you dare objectify me like that again, you jackass! She snapped, her eyes blazing with anger. Noah, still in shock, snapped out of it and immediately stepped in front of her, shielding her from Carlos and Mark. Let's go. Now, he said firmly, his hand protectively on her waist. He pulled her away from the scene, leading her out of the lunchroom as students stared after them, whispering. They walked away in silence, his grip on her waist tight and protective. They were outside now, the cool air helping to calm their nerves a bit. Are you okay? He asked, finally speaking up, as they found a secluded spot away from the crowd. He turned to her, inspecting her face for any signs of distress. He let out a sigh of relief, his tense shoulders relaxing slightly. Good, but what you did back there was crazy, you know? You could have gotten hurt, he chided. Hurt? I was the one who did the hurting, she said with a smirk, rubbing the palm that she slapped Carlos with. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. I should have known you could handle yourself. But seriously, princess, maybe tone down the slapping next time, he teased, trying to lighten the mood. She rolled her eyes playfully. Oh, come on, he deserved it and you know it. Plus, I've wanted to slap him for a while now. He lifted his hands placatingly. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, because he did. Just maybe not in front of the whole school next time, he suggested, amused. She chuckled. Fair enough. I'll try to keep my slapping tendencies indoors next time. Or at least more discreet. He grinned, the familiar, cocky expression returning to his face. But let's be real, that was kinda hot. My girl, defending her honor and all that. I'm not gonna lie, it was a turn on, he said, leaning in a bit closer. Carolina entered the car, still feeling slightly shaky from the adrenaline rush. She sank into the passenger seat and let out a long sigh. Noah got into the driver's seat, starting the car. He shot her a sidelong glance as he pulled out of the parking lot. You're quite the firecracker, you know that? She couldn't help but grin a little at that comment. Firecracker, huh? Is that some kind of compliment? He chuckled, eyes still focused on the road. Oh, definitely. It means you're fierce. A force to be reckoned with. Not to mention, insanely hot, he said, the last part coming out a bit huskier than he had intended. She could feel a blush creeping up her cheeks at his words, despite herself. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear I have the approval of the resident bad boy, she teased back, trying to keep her tone light, even as her heart fluttered in her chest. He glanced at her again, a smirk playing on his lips. "Oh, princess, you have far more than just my approval. You've got my full-blown interest, and you know it," he replied, his voice tinged with desire. She swallowed, the huskiness of his voice sending a shiver down her spine. "Is that so?" she asked, feigning nonchalance even as her heart rate quickened. He chuckled, his hand finding its way to her tender. "Don't play coy, princess. Keep my eyes off of you," he said, his hands starting to move in slow, circular. Carolina was sitting in her living room, impatiently waiting for a text or call from Noah. She had been trying to keep herself occupied, but her mind kept wandering back to him. Her parents were in the room with her, sitting on the couch and engaging in small talk, unaware of her nervous anticipation. As the minutes ticked by, her eyes kept darting to her phone, willing it to buzz with a notification. But there was nothing. She fidgeted in her seat, trying to hide her growing impatience from her parents. Her mother, noticing her restless behavior, looked over and asked curiously, "Are you expecting a call or something, darling? You've been checking your phone every 2 seconds." Carolina quickly shook her head, trying to appear casual. "Oh, no, just waiting for a friend to text me back about something important," she lied, not wanting to admit she was actually waiting for a message from her secret boyfriend. Her father looked up from his newspaper, raising an eyebrow. "Important, huh? Sounds serious," he said, studying her face for any signs of deception. But Carolina was determined to keep her relationship with Noah a secret. She forced a casual smile, shrugging lightly. "Oh, it's nothing too serious. Just need to coordinate some plans for a school project. It's a group thing, you know how it is," she replied, hoping they would buy her excuse. Her parents exchanged a brief glance, but seemed satisfied with her explanation. "Ah, the joys of academic collaborations, huh? Well, don't stay up too late waiting for that text. You need your beauty sleep, dear," her mother teased lightly. Carolina forced a chuckle, nodding in agreement. "Yes, I know, Mom. I won't stay up too late," she said, already mentally planning to stay up until she heard from Noah. She knew he was a night owl, but the wait was still agonizing. As the evening went on, Carolina continued to check her phone every few minutes, her anxiety growing. It was unusual for him to go without texting her for this long. She began to worry that something might have happened to him, or that perhaps he was ignoring her intentionally. The sudden knock at the door startled Carolina, breaking her out of her anxious thoughts. She looked over at her parents, who were both surprised by the unexpected visitor. Her father set aside the newspaper and stood up, making his way towards the front door. "I wonder who that could be," he said, curiosity tinged with a hint of worry. Carolina's heart dropped as she saw Noah standing on her front porch, flanked by his parents. The sight of them there, with such a serious expression on their faces, filled her with a mixture of dread and anticipation. She quickly stood up, watching as her father greeted them at the door. Her parents exchanged greetings with Noah and his parents, their curiosity piqued by this unexpected visit. They all made their way into the living room, the atmosphere heavy with tension. As they all settled into the living room, Carolina discreetly moved closer to Noah, trying to catch his eye, but he avoided her gaze, maintaining a neutral expression. His parents sat next to him, their faces giving nothing away. Carolina's heart was pounding in her chest as she realized the purpose of their visit. She could hardly contain her excitement and joy at the thought of being proposed to by Noah, her secret boyfriend. But she also couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety, unsure of how her parents would react to this surprise announcement. Carolina watched with bated breath as the discussion between their parents went on. She could see her parents nodding in agreement, their initial surprise slowly turning into acceptance. It seemed that they were finally on board with the idea of her marrying Noah. Noah finally let his gaze fall upon her, and the look in his eyes took her breath away. There was love and excitement there, but also something else, a possessive gleam that she had seen before. But she didn't mind it. In fact, it made her feel even more special and wanted